This week's devotion is very personal. I seldom share it, and am only sharing it for the sake of some of you who, like me, are influenced at times by your dreams.
Have you ever had a dream that was so powerful, so impactful that you never got over it the rest of your life? And at the same time, you didn't want to talk to too many people about it because it just seemed kind of weird? I did. I had a dream when I was 7 or 8 years old, something like that, just beginning to awaken to spiritual ideas. And that dream, still today in my 60s, it's still there. And it's still somewhat bewildering. So I want to tell it to you today. But before I do that, I want to take just a moment to share with you some trail cam clips. So take a look at this, and then let's come back and talk about dreams. I don't really know much about dreams. I've never studied dreams. I don't know why we dream, and I don't know why we dream what we dream. But I'm assuming that if a person studies dreams, that this dream has something to do with what was going on inside of me at that time. I told you recently at in one of these midweek devotions that I was about 7 years old when I first saw, I was at a camp meeting service down at an altar, and I saw a young man give his life to Christ and the change of his life, and that at that moment I thought to myself, this is what I want to do with my life. And I'm pretty sure that this kind of a reoccurring dream that I had very shortly after that would be considered, part of that, what was going on inside of me. Out of all of my aunts and uncles when I was a little kid, I had one, my Uncle Bob, that I was probably the closest to of all of them. We thought a lot of the same things as we grew up, and then eventually I became a pastor in the same conference, and we would see each other as colleagues. So when I was a kid, I had this dream one night, or maybe several nights, and it goes like this. It was in the summer of the year. It was after annual conference in our denomination. We would have an annual conference, and every year all the clergy would get together and the delegates to conference, and then they would assign all of the pastors to whatever church they were going to represent and work with over the next year. So in this one particular year, Uncle Bob got assigned, in my dream, Uncle Bob got assigned to a new church. And he was excited about it, just sort of beaming. And he had this kind of smile on his face. And he wanted to show his family all about his new church. And so we took the time to go on a trip to whatever town it was and all got in the car and drove to Uncle Bob's new church. And it was kind of an exciting time. And we got to his church. And I can remember my dream from when I was a child. It looked like a burned out log cabin almost. I mean, it was the walls in the front and the side were gone. It was burned out. It was just a rubble. The back wall had a bit of a fireplace to it, and there was a little cross area up there, but there just wasn't. It was gone, destroyed. And Uncle Bob was so happy showing us this, and we um, we didn't know what to say because it looked terrible. And then I woke up and had the dream again and again. Don't know how many times, just remember thinking, it was a recurring dream. It was confusing. It was, it bothered me. Oh, wow. Can, can you see this? I don't know if you can, but I just found a four-leaf clover. When I was a kid, they used to say that finding a four-leaf clover was a sign of good luck. I don't know if this camera will focus on it or not, but there's my four-leaf clover. Well, little ADD there. Back to my story. I never shook that dream. All through my life and childhood growing up, in the back of my mind was this kind of a weird dream that I'd had, and what sense to make of it. So as I got older, I became interested in art. When I first started college, I was a studio art major. And so one of the artistic pictures that I would just draw is that broken down burned out log cabin looking church. Because it was just in my mind, so I guess I fixated on it. But it was just always in the back of my mind. Have you ever fixated on something like that? I suppose when we're little kids we do. As I got older, I still did. I don't know, it just made a big impact on me. And I think God was working on my life. As I began to mature and be more serious and look at the world around me, I began to wonder if that was really Uncle Bob in my dream or if that was me in my dream. That as a little kid, thinking about my Uncle Bob, I wondered if maybe I was wrestling with my own self and if I was the pastor in my own story, in my own dream. Now we go from weird to weirder, okay? This little dream stuck in my mind. As a young pastor now, move up a few years, I'm now an adult, I'm in my first church, I'm excited about ministry, the church is, I'm seeing God work inside of the church, but I can't get this dream out of my head. And I began to wonder, not just if I was the pastor of that broken down church, but I began to wonder if I was going to be a pastor in a time when the church as a whole spiritually was broken down. If I grew up, of course, in the 60s and then in the 70s, in a time when religion was blossoming, but I was going to pastor in a time where it was a lot more difficult and less popular to be a Christian. So, somewhere in my 20s, I suppose, this maybe early 20s, mid 20s, this dream began to take a prophetic feeling for me. I was 25 years old when I had my firstborn son. And I named him Jeremiah. And I named him Jeremiah because Jeremiah was a solitary figure speaking out for God in a nation that had gone apostate and was on its last legs. And as he was growing up, I told my son that he was named after a prophet that stood alone, or almost alone. His secretary Baruch was with him. You know, it's kind of strange the dreams we have as little children and the way they influence our lives. Here I am in my late 60s, and that dream I had before I was 10 years old still has a lot of influence on me. And I don't remember ever telling this story to any of my children before. It's been kind of a personal story, just in my own life. And so here I am, a little kid was starting to have a spiritual side that's blossoming or budding. It hasn't bloomed yet. And then here I am now, an older person looking back on my ministry, still influenced by that little dream decades ago, over 60 years ago. Well, here we are near the end of another week. On Sunday, we have the great privilege of coming together to worship our Lord again. And may God bless you and watch over you. And if there are dreams, godly dreams, good dreams, that have an influence on you, may they come to fruition. Fruition? Bloom. God bless you.